Okay, Kim, take it away.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Hello to the Energy Code Board. Great to see you guys. And hi to all of those who are joining us virtually today. Apologies for being a few minutes late this morning. We just needed to get some tech figured out. So thanks for bearing with us and for your patience. I see a lot of folks streaming in today to the webinar. So we will start. We'll go ahead and dive into our meeting today. And we'll be covering our agenda here soon. So for those who are attending us from the public, we would love to know who you are in the organization you work for, if it's applicable, and where you're joining us from. So for those attendees, you all should have access to the chat. We invite you guys to drop your name, again, your organization, where you're joining us from, so that we know who we've got on the call today. And with that, I think before we dive into our agenda for the day, we would like to take a moment with the board to approve the meeting minutes from our last meeting. So hopefully you all had a chance to look at the meeting 6 meeting minutes, and I will offer up if any of the board members would like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll move to approve the minutes as presented for Energy Code Board meeting 6.
I'll second.
Buchanan second. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ron. You can have that one.
All right. I hear a motion and a second. Thanks, Kevin and Ron. All in favor of approving meeting 6 meeting minutes, please say aye.
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 Wonderful. And any opposed, please say aye. Okay. Thank you all. So meeting 6 meeting minutes have been approved, and they will be posted here soon for the public to review. So with that, we'll dive into today's agenda. So our agenda today, first, we're going to go through a quick reminder on the Energy Code Board, our process, and generally the importance around energy codes in the state of Colorado, just as sort of a primer for today and all of the discussions that we'll be having. For the next part of today's meeting, we have some interactive questions that we'll be asking our webinar attendees as they relate to things like community energy priorities, fairness, health, and affordability, and maximizing carbon emission reductions. These interactive questions are going to be used or be asked through a platform called Menti.com, and we will share a little bit more detail on how that works for our attendees here when we get to that session. But that will be a really great opportunity for our team to collect general feedback from the folks on the call today, and generally hear input on different priorities as they relate to this energy code. Then for the majority of today's session, we're going to have open public comment. And again, we will go through sort of our rules and structure when we get to that point of the meeting. But our goal is to hold 1 full hour for open public comment, where members of the public who are here attending the webinar today can raise their hand and speak for 2 minutes in front of the board about their priorities or any public comment or code proposals they would like to see in the low energy code. We will wrap up public comment today at 10:50 and close our meeting by going through a quick reminder on how folks can stay involved in this process throughout the rest of the code development work, when we anticipate those meetings and schedule being ready for the public, and how folks can make sure that they're submitting their comments throughout the process. We'll wrap up at the top of the hour at 11. So yep, sorry, Allie, go ahead and move to the next slide. All right, so our objectives for the day are to really make sure that we are welcoming in folks from the Colorado community into the process to develop the low energy and carbon code for the state. And so our goals around doing that are to make sure we're connecting the energy code that we're going to be working on building with this board to how that energy code and the results of that energy code can impact folks' lives. We also want to collect feedback on people's priorities and visions for that state model energy code, as well as feedback on key issues for carbon emission reduction, affordability, and public health as they relate to the energy code. And then finally, our key objective of the day is to allow you all attending this meeting today to share your voices and your perspectives to the Energy Code Board. And we'll go ahead to go to the next slide. All right, so we're again going to start with a quick overview of this process, the board that you all are seeing here on the webinar today, and why we're hoping for you all's involvement, and why these energy codes are really important to our lives. So first up, I think lots of folks, if you're here, probably know this already, but just quickly, what is an energy code? We know in Colorado, each town or county adopts its own building code, and this code outlines how local governments expect new buildings in their community to be built. The goal of building codes is to make sure that homes are built safely, to protect people's lives, that spend their time in those buildings, make sure they're not falling apart, gonna set on fire, all of that good stuff. So an energy code, by distinction, works the same as a building code, where each town or county can adopt an energy code that outlines how homes in buildings in that community should be built. But the distinction is that the energy code is, its purpose is to ensure that buildings are built to use energy very efficiently in order to make sure whomever is using that building is not spending serious amounts of money paying energy bills. And there are a couple of other key outcomes of the energy code as well that we'll talk about here in a moment. So next slide, please, Allie. The energy codes matter for several reasons other than just cost savings. They're important tools to make sure homes and businesses that need to use and pay for gas or electricity to stay warm or cool are doing so in an efficient way. They also make sure indoor air quality of the building isn't harming the folks that are using the building. And then if we zoom out a bit, energy codes can also help us address the problem of climate change. And climate change we know to be happening as humans have released more and more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And one of the biggest sectors of carbon emissions in Colorado is our buildings. And the energy code, which helps define how much energy those buildings can use, can help us address the emissions from that sector in particular. And to put a little bit more context into why energy codes are important for cost savings and affordability, Coloradans pay over $70 billion in utility bills every year. And the energy code is one of the primary regulatory drivers that can help make sure that the new homes and buildings that we're building are using energy as efficiently as possible to lower those bills for Coloradans. And then in addition, there have been studies done on why energy efficiency, which is something that the energy code promotes, is beneficial to sort of Colorado and society at large. And there are several different reasons or documented studied items on why energy codes can support public health and overall healthcare expenses. So we know energy efficiency upgrades have been shown to reduce indoor air contaminants linked to chronic illness. They help control dust mites, mold, moisture, improve asthma and other respiratory systems. Generally, they are better energy codes and better energy efficiency is known to provide general health benefits and reduce healthcare costs, even among low-income communities. And then because of the sort of reduction in pollution from creating energy that comes with energy efficiency, right? We use less energy, we need to create less energy. Energy efficiency upgrades have been shown to provide climate and health-related savings of around 35 to 40 cents per dollar of energy saved. So some really important and impactful things that the energy code can deliver. And that's why it's really important that for those of you in the audience who care about these different priorities and want to see them advanced in Colorado, share your perspectives with us on this energy code and what outcomes you guys would like to see. So what's the deal with the Energy Code Board? So the wonderful people you see sitting in front of you on this panel are our wonderful Energy Code Board. And this Energy Code Board was assembled by the Colorado Energy Office and the Department of Local Affairs to create 2 new state minimum energy codes. So the last energy code that was developed by this board happened, what was it, last year? And this board helped develop the model the model solar and electric ready code for the state of Colorado. And in this next round, we are going to be developing the low energy and carbon code for the state of Colorado. And so who is the board? We have 21 representatives from key building players in the building world from across the state, which includes reps from all of the different bullet points that you see on the screen there. And if you guys are interested to understand who from the board that you're looking at today fill these different roles, that can be found on the Colorado Energy Office's website under the Energy Code Board. And lastly, before we jump into some of our interactive questions today, we just wanted to remind you all of our process and the goals of this process. So this board is tasked with developing a low energy and carbon code that cities and counties in the state will start using in 2026. And the legislation that authorized this code board to create this new code outlined two primary goals for the low energy and carbon code. The first was to minimize carbon pollution from new homes and commercial buildings. And the second is to make sure that Coloradans can continue to build homes affordably. And so those are the two primary charges or sort of considerations that the board is working through as we develop this code. And we're excited to hear if there are additional priorities or ideas from you all that the board should be keeping top of mind as we move forward through this process. And then the last note I wanted to share is that this code is a critical step in the state's roadmap to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, as well as to make sure that buildings in the state are more safe, affordable, homes and workplaces. So, quick background on what we're doing here and why these energy codes are so important. And so now we're going to shift gears to asking you all, the attendees on today's webinar, what are you all's priorities as it relates to the energy code? So we'll have a couple of interactive questions that we're going to ask you all. And I just want to share if there's additional comments or thoughts that you all want to share. In addition to your answers to the interactive polls, we encourage you to think about those comments and then share those in the open public comment session at the later half of the meeting. So with that, I will pass it over to Allie to talk us through our interactive polls.
Awesome. Thanks, Kim. Before we dive into that, actually, we saw in the chat, Lindsay mentioned that Councilmember Jason McMillan from Crested Butte wanted to give public comment. And we just wanted to make sure that we could accommodate his timing since he can only be here till 9:45. Is Councilmember McMillan on the call and able to? Oh, perfect. Adam, are you able to promote him?
Jason, I think you should be able to talk now.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Nice to see everybody together again. Sorry I can't be there with you.
And Jason, real quick, we've got a 2-minute timer on public comment, so I'm just going to go ahead and start that now. But
okay, I'll move fast. But yeah, as you know, I had to step off because I'm going to be leaving council in a couple months. I also just had a baby girl last month, so yeah, our hands have been full. But I'm speaking on behalf of CC4CA, Colorado Communities for Climate Action, and the town of Crested Butte is a proud longtime member of CC4CA, which makes up 43 cities, towns, and counties working together for effective climate policy. As a coalition of local governments, CC4CA is keenly aware of the dual crises of housing affordability and climate change. Our built environment impacts local economies, housing accessibility, and equity as much as it impacts climate. That's why CC4CA supported HB 1362. All Coloradans can benefit from more efficient, lower cost, and quality built environments to live in. There's a time and place for statewide standards, and energy codes are a good example. A statewide model code can help with the needed market transformation to electrification. Minimum standards will promote improved technologies and better building materials to effectively address the link between the built environment and the climate. The bills that passed in this year's legislative session that addresses land use and increased opportunities for affordable housing, particularly those that promote ADUs and mandate more density near transit, make this the right time to ensure that new construction maximizes the long-term affordability for future residents. Ensuring reduced emissions with low energy and carbon codes achieves many goals. I watched your guys' 5th meeting on low energy and carbon code direction and gaps, and was encouraged by the discussion, and want to highlight just a few of the comments that you guys made. Carolyn noted that the highly efficient homes under the new code use less electricity than older homes, and that we should avoid the alarmism around breaking the grid with an electric preferred approach. So thanks, Carolyn, for flagging that. Kim and Ron also suggested varying rules on house sizes as an appropriate way to deal with affordability. This could address some of the concerns that Ron had about urban and ski resort communities versus more rural communities, which I do here. And then Ron mentioned, that might have been my note, Ron mentioned that importance of simplicity in the code as a way to ensure staff can manage the new codes. I think those are all really, really great points that you guys brought up, and I'll look forward to keeping up with your progress. So thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason, and appreciate you jumping on to give public comment early.
Yeah, thank you. Bye, guys.
All right, take care. Okay, thanks, Allie and Adam, for flagging that. And Allie, I'll pass it back to you to continue on with our interactive questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Kim. As Kim mentioned, we are at the more interactive portion of the meeting. This was really designed to be able to hear from more people and accommodate folks who have different preferred modes of giving feedback. And so we've developed some questions for you all using an online live input tool called Menti. If you attended the webinar, then you'll probably be familiar with this platform. But I just wanted to really emphasize before diving in that this is an opportunity to share both technical code related feedback as well as non-code specific feedback. So we really want to hear from all perspectives and just learn more about communities' priorities from across the state. We have three main topics, as Kim mentioned, that we wanted to talk to you all about. One is sort of just these broad energy priorities. And then the second and third ones are dealing with those main charges of the Energy Code Board to consider affordability and fairness, as well as carbon pollution. Each of those segments has just 2 or 3 questions, so please stick with us. And we'll sort of average around 3 minutes for each question. So please, we welcome you taking that full time to provide your thoughtful answers. And then I'll pass it back over to Kim to facilitate the open comment period. So we definitely ask that if you want to elaborate on any of the responses you provided in this Menti section or have other suggestions, that's the time to sort of have that more spoken dialogue. So just a quick overview of how to use Menti. We have this QR code that will allow you to access the platform. You can also go to menti.com and enter this 8-digit code, 49875641. And once you enter the code or use the QR code, then you'll see a screen pop up with a question. If folks have questions about how that works or having trouble, please feel free to use the chat and we'll sort through it. Awesome. So first, we just kind of wanted to start off with a little bit of an icebreaker and ask what everyone's favorite way or best way that they know how to save energy in their home or place of business. And this will just help us understand if the Menti is working all right. All right, we've got someone saying that they use air conditioning sparingly or not at all. Turning down the thermostat, very similar. Using a heat pump. Couple answers for heat pumps, so awesome. Adding a mini split heat pump saved $30 to $50 a month. We've got some for proper insulation. Ooh, we've got some answers for civic engagement. I love that. Opening and closing windows overnight to kind of even out the temperatures. Adding some attic insulation, cool. Wall insulation. These are all some great strategies. energy audit with infrared to find leaks. It's a great idea. Turning the air conditioning off at night and opening the windows instead. Awesome. Great. Let's see if we scroll down. Sealing the ducts, air sealing, some behavior changes. Energy Star appliances. Awesome. We'll give it just a little bit more time. And then looks like the Menti is working just fine. So all right, thank you so much for indulging us in our little icebreaker. So here's where we kind of get into it. If you had to completely rebuild your home or your place of business, maybe your office or your store, what features would you most want to upgrade? And I apologize, it looks very small on the screen, but I'll read some of the options out. We have lighting with more or better controls. We have energy saving, heating and air conditioning. We have better, less drafty windows, some more insulation to keep the home warm or cool during the appropriate season, better ventilation or cleaner indoor air, high efficiency appliances such as your refrigerator, your dishwasher, clothes washer and dryer, etc. Prioritizing all electric heating, cooling, stoves, appliances, etc., noting that we are allowing pathways for non-electric equipment. Better temperature or thermostat controls, more effective water heating, solar energy, and other. If folks have an other option, feel free to throw that in the chat. We're interested in hearing other ideas as well, beyond just these. All right, we've got a lot of great answers for energy saving, heating and air conditioning, insulation, all electric heating, cooling, stoves, etc. And Kim, I'm just realizing that the little timer on my PowerPoint stops working when I move to the Menti. So if I'm going over time, just please feel free to jump in.
Thanks, Allie. I will.
All right. We're seeing some of those answers slow down. I just want to note in the chat that board member Kim Wheels notes upgrading the electrical panel to accommodate a heat pump, hot water heat pump, and EV charger as well is a great feature to upgrade. If that sparks any other thoughts, feel free to throw that in the chat. All right.
Allie,
Awesome.
quick question. They can only pick one, right?
No, we allowed people to submit multiple answers.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, so with that, we are going to switch over to the fairness, affordability, and public health section. This is really speaking to that charge, the second of the two charges that Kim mentioned, enabling Coloradans to build more affordable homes. We know that, the board is just 21 individuals, even though they are experts in their respective fields. And, but they do acknowledge they want to better understand those potential equity concerns that Councilmember McMillan mentioned, knowing that this code will have potential impacts on public health, affordability of housing, et cetera, and those impacts might differ across different communities, different regions of the state. And so this is our intent is to kind of give voice to those differing perspectives on what this code can do. Are there any questions about that before jumping into the Awesome. We'll keep moving then. So, knowing that the board has to prioritize affordability and carbon pollution reduction, we're curious about some other outcomes that the board should be thinking about or prioritizing for this code. Some things that the board has talked about in recent meetings include technical feasibility, air quality, environmental health. And so we want to know if those resonate with folks, or if there are some priorities that we should be thinking about as well. Lower energy bills, healthy buildings. Yes, thanks, Adam. Feel free to provide specific comments on how to maximize affordability and equity, in addition to some other considerations. Long-term affordability. So like those ongoing maintenance costs. Resilience, the future, just all of it. Energy equity. I definitely look forward to hearing someone speak more to what they mean by energy equity in our next section. Benefits in disproportionately impacted communities. We've got competing answers for long-term and front-end affordability, affordable housing, indoor air quality, incentives. Maybe that speaks also to the front-end affordability piece. No nitrous oxides, indoor air emissions. Climate change, environmental health, retrofits, return on investment. We have cost-effective solutions. I also look forward to someone elaborating on what they mean by that. These are all great answers. I'm wondering if cost-effective solutions also includes technical feasibility, potentially. Give it another minute or so. Fossil fuel free. Sorry, I don't know why I had such difficulty in saying that. Reduced smog. It's another good one. Long-term resilience of our buildings. Awesome. Well, thank you for that. These awesome answers. I think this will be very helpful for the board. For our next kind of fairness and affordability and health question, we have what unintended consequences or potential negative impacts does the board really need to think about to avoid with these new new code requirements. And I think I'll just share that, our team struggled a little bit with how to phrase this question. So if folks have clarification needed, feel free to ask in the chat. I think this was sort of the intent behind this question was really to get a little bit deeper into what it means to have like a fairly constructed energy code.
Okay. Oh. When you coming back?
So was someone speaking or okay. All right, seeing some answers pop up. Increasing upfront costs is a potential unintended consequence or negative impact that we want to avoid. Something we want to avoid is conflicting requirements. We don't want high energy bills. There's a concern about having costs without added benefits or stranded assets of gas appliances. A one-size-fits-all kind of code. It's concern about rising gas rates. Concern of profits over people. Compliance complexity. That's a big one that we've heard a lot about. An undependable electric grid. Concerns about hurting the building industry. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that in our next section. We want to avoid, let's see, continued gas dependence, that housing is too expensive. Fear of transition. Ooh. Fear of change is very existential. Yes, lots of concern about making home prices unaffordable or unattainable. Asthma, an unenforceable code. We got concerns kind of on both sides of it, like the compliance piece and builders and developers trying to figure out how this code works. And on the other side, we have the building code officials trying to enforce these requirements. Conflict with wildfire. Want to make sure that these are high quality buildings that aren't leaky or drafty. Want to make sure there's sufficient workforce to be able to build all of these new buildings. Want to avoid pricing low-income communities out. Got something in the chat, partisanship from the fuel industry. Existing housing impacts. Yes, thanks to Kim. If folks aren't monitoring the chat, yes, the screen is getting very hard to read because of all these awesome responses. We will be sharing these back out to the public and the board after this meeting. So you'll get sort of the list format version of this. Yes, they're getting very small. All right, we'll give it just a second more. Get your last thoughts in. Seeing a lot of great themes here. All right. So to Adam's point in the chat, I think everyone knows that the affordable housing crisis in Colorado is very complicated. There's a lot of different facets to this. And the energy code is just going to be one part of it, but we want to know if you all have ideas about how the state can best support home affordability through this code. Knowing that, those some of those multiple choice options that we presented before, those appliances, insulation, all of windows, all of those pieces are facets of the energy code that the board can impact now. How can the state kind of make a code that supports home affordability with the tools that it has? Robust tax credits was the first one. Trying to stick with the original mission given by the House bill and not adding other mandatory components. A lot of support for incentives and tax credits and that kind of thing. Supporting the workforce growth, which was a concern that we heard earlier. Prioritizing site energy use reductions, knowing that lower energy bills also means lower ongoing maintenance costs. Providing information on subsidies and rebates that help builders meet the code. Lots of support for some incentives. Window prices are increasing. Building right up front, short and simple. Providing better financing options. Setting an expectation of clean electric equipment and supporting electric workforce transition. Reducing permit fees for high performance buildings. Looking at the total cost of ownership. So the mortgage plus utilities instead of just first cost. Allow homeowners or building owners the options for choices instead of mandates. Making sure added costs are commensurate with efficiency gains. Contractor trainings on cold climate heat pumps. More education, more education on with the general public, realtors, other industries on long-term benefits. Rural areas don't have infrastructure for all the energy code requirements. So assistance for rural communities. Flexibility in regulations, considering local conditions. That communities can adopt the code and make adjustments. They just can't go below what the state model code is. determining how much of the emissions from the built environment comes from existing versus new construction. All right, we'll give it just a second more before we move on. So please add your last thoughts. Ooh, I missed some, sorry. Incentives for higher density, relax requirements based on criteria, incentives and policies for smaller homes. Awesome. Well, thank you for the thoughtful responses there. We just wanted to make sure we also got input on the board's other charge, which was to maximize those carbon emission reductions or reduce as much greenhouse gases as possible. So we have another set of questions here for you all. And the first one is kind of a ranking question. We'd love to know where folks want to prioritize, what elements of the building code to prioritize in order to reduce carbon emissions the most. So we've got some options here. We have insulated walls, ceilings, and floors. We have those windows and doors. We have heating and cooling systems, lighting systems, renewable energy systems, and appliances. So what do folks want the board to prioritize in their efforts to make a code that helps reduce carbon emissions from buildings? Got a question in the chat. What is the difference between appliances and heating and cooling systems? And yes, the appliances would include just everything else outside of those heating and cooling equipment. So for example, cooking, water heating, etc. All right. We're getting a few responses, a lot of support for leaning on insulation to help reduce carbon impacts, carbon pollution. Close second is heating and cooling systems. Either very highly efficient heating and cooling or potentially electric. Got some support for windows and doors as well. Got lighting systems and appliances as those lower tier ones, renewable energy systems. If folks that selected other want to elaborate in the chat, that would be awesome. We'd love to know what you're thinking about or what we might have missed in this question. All right, heating and cooling is pulling ahead. We'll give it just a minute more. And again, if folks have that other idea, we'd love to hear a little bit more about that. Another idea would be demand response or grid attract. in the grid interactive buildings. I think I had too much coffee today. Not the only one out there. All right, I'm seeing the responses slow down a little bit. So I will just move us to the next question. So kind of elaborating on that ranking exercise that we had you all do, we'd love to get a little bit more detail. So what approach do you think would be most effective in reducing those emissions from your maybe top 1 or 2 selected elements? And so some examples that are going to pop up on your screen. So if you thought lighting was a priority for reducing emissions, maybe the approach could be better controls or swapping out for LEDs. If you selected heating and cooling systems, maybe that means like electrifying these. If you selected insulation, lots and lots of it, or sort of that passive solar design to make sure that your house is staying warm when you want it to. Getting some responses here. We have cold climate heat pumps. Lots of support for heat pumps and electric heating and water heating. Reduced air changes per hour. I know in the chat, there are new Freon requirements being implemented by 2025 that will increase HVAC costs. Suggestion that this should be reviewed. My QR code is getting in the way. Heating and cooling, passive house level quality building. So very high performance buildings essentially. Induction stoves. Seeing some comments for backup systems to help give folks peace of mind in those cold climates. Following the base energy codes without adding more restrictive appendices, allowing mixed fuel pathways, which the board has to do. LED lighting, requiring or incentivizing photovoltaics and hydronic panels, relaxing requirements if certain renewable energy targets are met, reducing gas use. The electric supply in Colorado is becoming lower emission. The carbon intensity of fossil gas will still remain high. Raise the base. Site energy use targets. Plug for cold climate heat pumps that work down to -20 degrees. Electric preferred. Induction cooking is way better. Let's see if I've missed anything. Cold climate heat pumps combined with insulation and air sealing. I'll say that's very important for me because in Chicago, they always say it's the wind, not the actual cold. Site EUI targets to unbias the fuel choice. Remove code biases and barriers to electrification. A lot of common themes around sort of that electric preferred or incorporating more emphasis on electric equipment. We'll give it just another minute. So get your thoughts in. Air seal, duct sealing, or similar non-name brand. All right, these are all great suggestions. Getting some different perspectives, which is awesome. Community support for air leakage testing. All right, I will give it 10 more seconds. So get your answers in. All right, I'm gonna call it right. Oh, we're really using those last 10 seconds. Awesome. All ducts located within conditioned space. Alrighty, I'm gonna call it. Thank you everyone for participating in our Menti polls. These are really helpful. I'll pass it back to Kim.
Awesome. Thanks, Allie. And thank you everyone for providing that really great input on those questions. If ideas continue to come to you as we move through the meeting, please feel free to drop those in the chat and we'll continue to pull those for consideration for the board. But now we're going to move into our open public comment session. So when we do this, we'll stop sharing our screen so you guys can see all of the board and the board can see you. If you would like to turn your camera on, no pressure if you would not. So how this comment session is going to work, we're going to ask the attendees if you would like to give a public comment to raise your hand, and we will call on folks on a first come, first served basis. We're going to ask that everybody keep their comment today to a maximum of 2 minutes. And I just want to note that because we want to make sure to save space and time for everybody to give a comment today, we are not going to have the board interacting or responding to any of the public comments today. So as you all raise your hand, if you're interested in giving a public comment, you'll be promoted to as a panelist. We'll set a timer for that 2 minutes. It's okay if you go slightly beyond that, but we ask you to try to keep your comments concise so we save time for everybody. In addition, we want to encourage folks, if you didn't come to this meeting intending to give a public comment, but something sparked in your, or you got inspired during any of the last Menti questions and you want to elaborate on any of your answers, we encourage folks to think about that and provide additional comments there. And then the last thing that I wanted to share is we have a full hour for this public comment session, and we're going to get through as many public comments as we can. If we get to a point later in the meeting where we have additional time for public comment, but no additional hands are raised, we'll open up the floor to folks that already gave public comment to elaborate for an additional minute or two on any of their comments. This is only going to happen if we have additional time in the meeting, which we very well may not. So again, make sure you cover your primary comment in your first 2 minutes, and we may have time at the end for additional. So making sure I'm not missing anything, Allie, Adam, cover all the rules of engagement. Okay, cool. So with that, we'll stop sharing our screen and we'll ask our participants today to raise your hand if you would like to give public comment today. And then as we see those hands raised, we'll just promote you all one at a time. And don't everybody jump at it at once.
No one wants to go first.
No, it's a scary thought. Anyone want to break the ice from us out of our wonderful attendee list? All right, we've got Johnny who's raised their hand. So Johnny, we're going to promote you and make sure you're in the meeting room. Hello, Johnny. Can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Oh, we can. All right.
Amazing.
Thanks for having us off today.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. My name's Johnny Kocher with Rocky Mountain Institute. I'm a manager on our building regulations team, and Rocky Mountain Institute is trying to secure a low carbon future for all. I'd say that the main message I'd like to convey to the board today is that the energy code has inherently been structured in a way that favors gas appliances historically. This is because there's been relative baseline set in the code. Basically, gas appliances are set on one baseline and electric appliances are set on another. So you can actually comply with the code today installing a 60% efficient gas water heater, and that is considered as efficient as a code that installs a heat pump water heater with a COP of like 1.9. So you can be your electric water heater is required to be 3 times as efficient as your gas water heater, and it would both be code compliant. That and benefits gas appliances over electric appliances, and that's been how it is for 15 years, 20 years, and we need to change that. We need to be debiasing this in the code, and we should be trying to structure the code in a way that moves towards setting a level playing field for electric appliances and gas appliances, so that achieving our low energy targets and low carbon targets as the statutory law requires us to will no longer be benefiting gas appliances, which have higher carbon emissions. Look forward to working with the board on ways to structure that. Plan on submitting some draft proposal ideas that RMI has been working on that tackles this exact problem that we've been seeing in the base iCodes in ASHRAE 90.1. And thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate y'all.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Johnny. 1 for kicking us off and 2 for that great comment. Stop the timer. All right, cool. Thanks so much, Johnny. We're going to move on to our next hand raised in our participant list here, which is Colin Toome. So Colin, Johnny, I'm going to kick you back out, and Colin, I'm going to add you in. Okay, Colin, I think you're in the webinar room. Do you want to unmute and make sure we can hear you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
All right.
it works. All right.
Thanks, Colin.
Here we go. Good morning. I'm Colin Toome, Climate and Health Strategist at Boulder County and Vice Chair, Colorado Communities for Climate Action. I'm here this morning to urge you to lead and lean into our need to rapidly electrify our buildings, starting with new buildings that will be around long after our current climate targets have passed. Local governments are on the front lines of climate disasters such as the Marshall Fire, a mile from where I sit now, as well as on the recovery and the rebuild. From this vantage point, and from our real data on the cost of building electric, even at the beginning of the electric workforce transition, it's clear that the price of entrenching any new gas is much greater than the marginal cost of electrifying new builds. CC4CA's local governments have been early adopters of efficient building codes since our inventories reveal we cannot reach our climate goals without electrification of new buildings. Also, within the context of regional building code cohorts, we see that high expectation of new construction increases compliance consistency and encourages jurisdictions to strive for the codes they need to protect their residents. Electrification is not just critical for greenhouse gas reductions. Research increasingly shows the impact of gas combustion on both indoor and outdoor air quality. With our most populous areas in severe non-attainment of federal ozone health standards while our population continues to grow, and the entire state experiencing heat and air quality impacts, we have to hold new housing and building to a standard that will preserve our quality of life. Cannot afford to further emissions from gas, and we cannot allow Coloradans to be stranded on outdated, inefficient technology. Unfortunately, current code options are structurally biased against electrification by effectively requiring less efficiency from buildings with gas furnaces and water heaters. This makes no sense given that electric appliances get cleaner with our greening grid, while gas-fired appliances can never be emissions-free and subject residents to gas price volatility. You have the opportunity to set precedent in correcting this failure by setting the same energy target for all buildings regardless of fuel use. We strongly urge the Energy Code Board to incorporate proposals that serve energy equity and market equity by allowing electrification to become the default on its merits. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Colin. Really appreciate your comments. I am going to go ahead and drop you back into our participant group. And our next speaker with their hand raised is Mira. So Mira, I'm going to promote you. And I see you in our space, so just making sure we can hear you.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes. Okay. Thanks, Mira. Go for it.
Great, thank you. My name is Mira Fickling, and I'm the Building Decarbonization Manager at Western Resource Advocates. WRA works in partnership with Colorado's legislators, regulators, agencies, and cities to craft smart policy solutions to address climate change. I'm here today to express our support for a robust low carbon and energy code that will save Coloradans money on energy bills, improve health and safety in our buildings, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions from burning fossil fuels for space and water heating. Accordingly, we advocate for a code that prioritizes minimizing site energy use. As written today, the IECC uses two different sets of energy use intensity baselines, one for mixed fuel buildings and one for all electric buildings. The EUI baseline for an all electric building is significantly lower. Because performance targets are set relative to a lower baseline for all electric buildings than for mixed fuel buildings, the energy code is inherently biased toward installation of gas appliances. Efficient electric appliances like heat pumps and heat pump water heaters have significantly lower site energy use than gas furnaces and water heaters. For example, a split system heat pump is required to achieve a seasonal efficiency of 240%, while a gas furnace electric buildings under current codes, heat pumps and heat pump water heaters are not appropriately credited for their lower site energy use. Through the Low Carbon and Energy Code, Colorado has the opportunity to correct this bias and set the same energy use target for all buildings, regardless of which fuel they use. De-biasing the code will help incentivize the new construction market toward efficient electric appliances that reduce pollution and are aligned with Colorado's climate goals for buildings. Thank you for your consideration.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mira. All right, I'm going to drop you back into our participant group. Wonderful. And I'll just pause this and cancel so we can reset our timer. Okay, so I'm looking at our list of attendees and not seeing any hands raised. So thank you to those who spoke. Oh, and we've got another couple who are ready for public comment. So Genevieve, I see you raised your hand first, so I will go ahead and promote you right now. And you want to just unmute, make sure we can hear you?
Yep, can you hear me?
Yes. All right, thanks, Genevieve.
Genevieve Show. I'm gonna speak more on behalf of a citizen of Colorado than my jurisdiction. I am all for the energy reduction and carbon. I'm definitely not opposed to that, but I do think that sometimes we get hyper focused on trying to make a code across the board, across the line that makes everything apples to apples instead of apples to oranges. I think that there's a lot of lessons learned that we can be taking from other states throughout the country. Namely, if you look at things such as Texas, what are we doing if our power grid goes out? We move everything to electric. What do we do in those types of situations? I think that there's places for everything. But as a whole, to make things go across the entire state the exact same doesn't work. You go into some of the rural places, maybe in like Southwest, Southeast, what are they going to do if they don't have the ability to keep up with their electrical systems? Not all places are going to allow people to put in solar. You can even see the examples where some of the things that come around electric vehicles and, you know, how does a place respond if there is a fire, if they don't have the resources to be able to put out those types of situations. So I think that trying to put everything the exact same way, you can't put all circles into a square peg, is not the approach we should be doing as a state. And I think sometimes the urban areas and the non-urban areas get lumped into the same thing. So I ask that you guys look at things as not just a one case fits all. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Genevieve, for that great comment. Really appreciate you sharing your thoughts today. So I'm going to drop you back to our attendee group. And we'll go ahead and wait for our next attendee to raise their hand. It takes you all a moment to organize your thoughts, no worries. So Rhett, thanks for raising your hand. I'm going to promote you. Do you want to unmute, Rhett, and just make sure we can hear you?
Yes, how's that?
Sounds great. Thanks,
Okay,
Rhett.
wonderful. Thank you. Thank you all for your service on this board. Really appreciate your efforts, and just wanted to add on to what was just said there, that mixed fuels have many benefits for our Colorado climate. And I don't believe this approach should be penalized. As you know, in the news, many of the current automakers are pivoting to this approach for hybrid type vehicles. And so I just ask that you just consider the benefits of a mixed fuel home, particularly, but just in general for our citizens. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Rhett. Really appreciate that comment. So I'll go ahead and drop you back into the group. All right. Cool. So again, if any other members of the attendees today would like to give public comment, no rush, but feel free to raise your hand when you're ready. We'll reset my timer here. Should have prepared some jokes for the in-between while we wait for folks to prepare. I'm really bad at jokes. So if the Energy Code Board has one, feel free to unmute and share. But I will actually ask you to hold that joke for now. We have a next attendee who would like to give comment. So Christine, thanks for raising your hand. I'm going to promote you. And I see you in our group. So just want to unmute Christine and make sure we can hear you.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, good to go.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Christine Brinker. I'm the Senior Buildings Policy Manager for Southwest Energy Efficiency Project, where we've worked on energy codes for many years now. And we've been excited to see the transition and evolution of those energy codes. And thank you all for your hard work and your careful attention to crafting our state model code. I know it's not easy, and we want to make sure it leads to the kinds of homes and buildings that we want to see in our communities, especially homes that are safe, healthy, comfortable, and affordable, not just to buy, but also to live in. You may have heard the characterization. Our homes are the boxes where we keep our families. And in keeping with that theme, I want to make sure that the boxes where we keep our families have a strong focus on clean indoor air that's free from toxic pollution and also has very strong, sturdy, durable quality construction that can withstand our, unfortunately, increasingly common extreme weather events. And furthermore, I hope you will maintain a focus on long-term affordability, because we all hope to be in Colorado for a whole long time and not just short-term builder profitability. In response very quickly to a couple of the previous comments, we're hearing a lot of misinformation and disinformation about electrification and heat pumps. First of all, they don't work in a power outage, but neither do gas furnaces or gas water heaters. So that's not necessarily a compelling reason to maintain a reliance on fossil fuels. And on the other point, the code already has multiple flexible paths built into it. It's not one size fits all. It already has various ways that builders can meet the targets according to how they best see fit for their own preferred methods, techniques, and materials. Thank you again for all your hard work here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Christine, for that wonderful comment. I'm going to go ahead and drop you back into our attendee list. All right. Wonderful. Any other attendees who would like to give public comment, whether it be technical or non-technical, whether it be short or you want to max out your 2 minutes? We welcome any and all additional comments. So again, we'll just give you all a moment to organize your thoughts and raise your hands. And when you're ready, please raise your hand and we'll promote you. Okay, wonderful. Dana, thank you so much for raising your hand. I'm gonna move you into our boardroom. And if you don't mind unmuting, Dana, and just making sure we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. All right.
All right. Thank you all so much. I'm so impressed. I've been following all your meetings. They're intense and amazing, and you guys have put in so much work. I just would like to raise one elephant in the room, and that is overpopulation. I know that you really don't have any control over that, but it's probably the major factor to our climate problem right now. So I just wanted to raise that and put it in everybody's, a little pea in everybody's brain. And thank you again.
Wonderful. Thanks, Dana, for that wonderful comment. Appreciate you raising your hand. So I'm going to go ahead and drop you back into our attendee list. All right. And same message for those who would like to give public comment, collect your thoughts, and feel free to raise your hand. And in the meantime, if the board has any jokes, feel free to jump in. Yeah, Carolyn.
I don't have a joke, but during this pause, I did want to make sure and encourage Mr. Coker, Ms. Tillman, Ms. Vickling, who all raised concerns around how different fuel types are featured in code and seem to have some suggestions, and just encourage them to submit their recommendations to us in writing. I know Mr. Coker had mentioned that he has some thoughts. Certainly very interested in hearing more about that. So just wanted to please encourage them to do that.
Thank you, Carolyn. All right. Well, we know there are many of you attendees passionate about energy codes, but we also know that speaking in front of a group that is on a webinar that's publicly available is not always the most comfortable. So fully understand if speaking today is not the pathway you'd like to take. But if it is, again, please raise your hand. Any and all comments are welcome. They don't have to be pre-thought out or well-structured or any of that stuff. And I guess I want to add one more thought for the folks attending today. This is one of, I think, the last opportunities in a few months for vocal public comment to be given to the board. We have our written comment forms, which you can always submit public comment through, and we'll go through that towards the end of the meeting. But I do want to emphasize that this is the sort of best first chance to get your thoughts out to the board before the board dives into that really detailed and technical code discussion on what this low energy code will look like. So again, just making sure that folks on this call, if you do have something to say, that you use this time today. All right, and if we don't see any hands raised, I think what we're gonna do is allow folks who have already spoken a few more minutes to elaborate on any comments if they would like to, just to make sure we're using as much of our public comment time today. So for folks who have already spoken or have not spoken yet, again, if you have any additional comments, please raise your hand. Those who have already spoken will give you one extra set of 2 minutes to share additional thoughts if you'd like to share them. And we'll probably give folks till around 10:20 to raise your hand. So, you know, take your time, be thoughtful about the responses or what you might want to share. And if we see no more raised hands around 10:20, we may go ahead and start wrapping up today. So please raise your hands if in the next few minutes if you think you'd like to share something.
And Kim, maybe just to offer to get some of the creative juices flowing here. I think the other, there are a lot of considerations involved here in the energy code. And I think what the board would really benefit from hearing about is challenges you face with the energy code, whether or not that relates to electrification or just base energy efficiency requirements, things that involve workforce shortages in particular areas of the state that would need to be addressed through requirements. I mean, there's a whole range here of different considerations that aren't just necessarily focused specifically on carbon reductions or specifically on affordability, but also on technical feasibility, implementability, enforceability, that we would love to hear either through these live comments or through the comment form or through the chat. Those are all issues that the board needs to be cognizant of, and we would love to hear about.
Awesome. Thanks, Adam. And I see Colin has raised her hand again. So Colin, I'm going to bring you back into the room and we'll give you an additional 2 minutes to share any final thoughts you have with the board.
All right, thank you. And thanks for having me again. I won't take too much more of your time, but you know, I did want to just relate, expand a little bit on something I alluded to, which is, you know, local governments really struggle that we are trying to protect our residents. And it's very difficult for us to do that when there's only certain things that are under our control. And building codes are usually regarded as being one of those things. I can't overemphasize, though, how important your work is to setting an expectation for what we do with new construction. And when you kind of raise that floor, it really does a lot to encourage neighboring jurisdictions that, you know, have less capacity to kind of, you know, invent stuff themselves, to also raise the codes in the way that they know they need to protect their residents in both the air quality and the climate sphere. So I just really want to thank you all for the work that you're doing and emphasize just how important it is to local governments to raise that floor as much as possible, especially around electrification. So thanks very much.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Colin, for that additional comment. I'm just stop the timer here. All right. Thanks, Rhett. I see you, and I'm gonna promote you again into our boardroom. And we'll give you an additional 2 minutes to share any final thoughts with the board.
Thank you, Kim. Just a couple things on that note, Adam, that your request there for challenges. I'm with Classic Homes, a local home builder and developer in Colorado Springs, and the architecture manager, so responsible for all of our new home designs, and also serve on the local home builders association and advocating for home affordability policies. And so we work closely with Colorado Springs Utilities and have a relationship with them in helping them to achieve their goals for carbon reduction. And so one of the things we've learned from CSU is that they currently are not offering rebates on solar panels because they do not have the capacity to store solar power. Once it's gained, they have to either use it immediately or store it, and they're making strides towards that objective. But at the time, right now, they cannot do that. So they are focusing their rebate and incentive programs towards the high efficiency appliances. And that's what we as builders are trying to get behind as well. So there are high efficiency appliances that are natural gas. It's not just electric, and there are benefits to hybrid systems. So again, I just want to emphasize that a one size fits all, again, is not necessarily in the best interest of affordability. And our homes today, from a ventilation standpoint, are extremely tight. So we cannot, without additional cost, a substantial cost, make the homes tighter. So the envelope really is at a point now where we are restricted with what we can do on that side. And so I think there are other opportunities that we can look at for achieving an energy reduction. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rhett. I appreciate you jumping back in to share those additional comments. All right. And it looks like all of our speakers had a little bit more to say. So Genevieve, I'm going to bring you back in. Those who haven't spoken yet, don't forget that we are still open to hearing new comments. But Genevieve, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you for an extra few minutes.
Sure, thanks. I'll speak in this one to address some of the questions that Adam brought up. Over where I work as building official here, one of the struggles that I constantly hear from our contractors and homeowners is that the infrastructure isn't set up they're constantly struggling with the utility companies who are struggling to be able to put in transformers or lines to the areas. It's not that it's not that people don't want this, it's just that we don't have that ability to provide it everywhere. And so that's where we have to keep that check and balance and still keep allowing people to have those hybrid options as was mentioned by others. And then we have some people building in areas that are extremely rural and they themselves don't want to have to be put into a box of only having, solar or different things along those lines. Maybe they're trying to build something that's more like a dry cabin per se option, if you like, and they do want to live in an odd off-grid situation. So implementing people to have to put stuff into their home that they wouldn't actually even need or use is one of the other comments that we get a lot over here until there's more infrastructure that allows them to have to do that without having to eat the cost. Because that's the other thing that we hear too, is if you're the new builder, you're going to do that. Or maybe I want to sell my home and move somewhere else. Well, I can't sell my home because I can't afford a home somewhere else or to build somewhere else. And as a Colorado native, seeing the changes that have happened since born here, even myself, I'm pigeonholed because of some of the way the code doesn't have as much flexibility myself. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Genevieve. Really appreciate you sharing those additional thoughts with the board. All right. Okay, thanks to all of our speakers so far. We still have around 25 minutes left for this open public comment period, so want to make sure that everybody who wants to speak is given that chance. And all right, Johnny, I see you. We're gonna, I'll bring you back into the meeting room and give you another couple minutes to speak to the board.
Yeah, I kind of just want to respond to that last comment about the readiness of the grid and I understand the concerns there. Just want to keep for the board members in mind that Colorado is a summer peaking grid, so there is a lot of headroom on the grid for us to be moving towards electric heating without actually causing the overall grid to need to be upgraded. It's not, when you add heat pumps, it's going to not be impacting the overall peak because it's peaking during the winter time, which is not where the rest of the grid is currently peaking at. And that's according to the NREL electric feature study, which I will include in my comment that I submit. And 20% of the overall electric demand could actually be offsetted if we were to use grid interactive technology like demand response, batteries, things like that. And that's according to a BRAT group study in 2019. So there are solutions here that means we could build smart. I think that that's the way we should be approaching this, but also understand the concerns that folks are bringing out. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Johnny. Appreciate you jumping back in to share those extra thoughts. I'll just cancel this and move you back into our attendee list. All right. I think most of our speakers have now shared their additional thoughts with the board. So do we have any folks on the call today that have not yet had a chance to share that would like to express any thoughts, quick or long, technical, non-technical, with the board? Okay. So in not seeing any new hands, I think, and I want to make sure we're being thoughtful, folks that may have had to jump on late or may have needed to leave early, but making sure that we save the rest of the space for public comment. If you have a thought, please continue to raise your hand as we've been requesting, and we'll move you into the boardroom. But I think what we could do, given the sort of shortage of public comments coming in right now, is for the next 5 minutes or so until we see another hand raised for our attendees to give public comment. I would love to turn it over to the board. I know that I'm putting the board members on the spot a little bit. I know we shared we wouldn't have any time for board engagement, but just wanted to offer up, and Carolyn has done this already, but if any other board members want to respond to any of the comments that we've heard so far in the meeting today, would love to give the board members a few minutes to do so while we wait to see if there are any additional comments. So if you're a board member, if you have any thoughts to share about the public comments we've heard, or if you'd like to respond to anything or emphasize anything, please unmute and feel free to share your thoughts. Must be it's just a sleepy morning for everybody today. And if everyone feels like they don't have anything to share, we can certainly move on. But board members, any reactions or thoughts from what we've heard today? Yeah, Kevin.
I'm just curious, the couple of comments that talked about debiasing the code between gas and electric. Are there examples from the different municipalities around the state that have implemented, their own local codes that have found effective ways to address that?
And Adam, I just want to make sure we're good on the process. So if Johnny has an answer, I can pull him back in to answer that question.
Please.
Okay, awesome. Johnny, moving you back in.
Thank you so much. So Louisville has done this by setting kind of EY targets for commercial buildings. When you set an objective EY target, that makes it you're basically putting all energy efficiency measures on a level playing field because they're all being compared off of each other based on their EUI reduction instead of setting a separate baselines, which is the way in which the code is inherently structured now. Denver does this as well. They have basically, if you're moving towards an all electric route, you don't have to get as many renewable energy efficiency requirements. So it's kind of like if you're doing all electric, we're going to recognize the fact that you already have to hit a stricter UI by requiring less renewable energy on the roof. There may be a few other examples that my fellow code nerd friends might be able to chime in on, but those are the ones I can remember off the top of my head. Other examples from other states, Illinois is also taking this approach with their stretch code. Washington State is taking this approach. I think Massachusetts and their stretch code has taken this approach. California takes this approach. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for that answer, Johnny. Really appreciate that. And good question, Kevin. Any other thoughts or questions from the board? I feel like I saw a hand and then it went away. Tim. All right, jump in.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Tim Pate, one of the board members, building official in City and County of Broomfield. I know there's been a lot of discussion of XL Energy. I know they're one of the bigger energy providers in the state of Colorado, but I'm going to be requesting Lotus to do some research for the board members and for me. I know I just doing some Google searching while we were listening today, and looks like XL has the net zero carbon-free goal by 2050. That's what they're going to try to make that. But what I'm curious about is I also found that not only XL provides electricity in Colorado, but Black Hills Energy is another big one. There's 29 municipal utilities. I know Longmont's one. I live right outside of there, and 22 rural electric co-ops. So I'm kind of curious. I know we're not going to get the answer today, but I'm going to be asking for this for use with the board as we make our decision of what are all those other utility providers' goals, and if they have goals and how far along because as we move forward with the potential, I know we're not maybe looking at electrification, but I know there's been a lot of discussion about that. So that's just my comment. And, you know, go on the record to ask the Lotus CEO to be trying to get some more of that input. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Tim. And I'm sure Adam's going to respond to that, but happily, our team is happy to follow up on that and provide more of that insight to the board. Adam?
Yeah, so I'm just going to mostly follow up with some more general information, and then we can certainly pull together more specific data or anything like that. But Tim, ultimately, the regulated utilities, so Xcel, Black Hills Energy, are required by state statute and by the Public Utilities Commission to hit certain reduction targets from their electricity generation by 2030, 2035, maybe in 2040. I forget what the interim or the additional targets are beyond 2030. And all of those utilities currently are required to produce a near-term plan, essentially, as to how they're going to, through their various generation resources, to hit that 80% statutory reduction by 2030. All of them have those plans that have been submitted and approved by the Public Utilities Commission. And we generally are on track. Estimated across all of the regulated utilities, we expect approximately an 85% reduction in emissions by 2030. So actually exceeding that 80% statutory goal by a little bit. I will also note that the Energy Office did a study on what the future of electricity generation and the emissions associated with that is in the state across various different scenarios. And one of the scenarios is essentially business as usual, continuing on track the way we are now and in the progress that we're expected to make by 2040. And under that scenario, the Energy Office estimated approximately 94% emissions reductions from 2005 levels based on just a business as usual scenario. That factors in all the state's generation, not just the regulated utilities. So that includes municipally owned utilities and others. And so that's just the business as usual track. Essentially, if we do nothing additional to what we're doing today already, the requirements that are already in place today, we're anticipated to hit approximately 94% reduction. And then there were other different scenarios in which we could get up to about 98 to 99% reduction. But obviously with more cost associated and different mixes of resource generation. But just wanted to flag both of those things, that there are statutory requirements in place for all of the regulated utilities, many of which municipal and cooperative utilities have also voluntarily committed to. Not all, but many have. And then we do have that study that demonstrates kind of what our expectations are for going forward. So we can certainly put more information together that's more detailed than what I just said, but just wanted to highlight those two things.
Wow, thank you. I was not aware of that. That's great news. Appreciate that feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Adam. Carolyn.
Yeah, the grid electricity issue is solved. Sorry. Tim's question just prompted me to name this as well. And I wanted to appreciate, a couple of our speakers spoke about, not one size fits all, and acknowledging there were some comments about solar and net metering and how that varies. And so I also just wanted to name that we'll perhaps the Lowe's team can support some research around the different context for solar in the state outside of our regulated utilities, because I know that varies as well, because there are some pretty substantive solar requirements in the base 2024 IECC code that I think we are going to want to dive into in more detail. And so I think understanding kind of what that space looks like outside of our more commonly thought about areas in terms of like Xcel territory or Black Hills territory, I think would be very helpful for us.
Awesome. Yeah, Carolyn, happy to follow up on that, and we can coordinate with Adam on how to compile that resource for the board. Okay. While we have no board hands raised, I want to turn back to the attendees again and offer up, if you all have any thoughts you'd like to share with the board, please raise your hand and we'll make sure you are jumped into this room and are able to share your thoughts. And again, as a reminder, at the end, we'll kind of go through the additional opportunities you guys have to share comment outside of the spoken comment opportunity today. Rhett, I see ya. Thanks again for raising your hand. I'll bring you back in the room. And feel free to continue sharing.
Okay, thanks, Kim. Adam, I just wanted to ask if you could clarify a little bit more on the carbon emission reduction goals that you just talked about there for 2030 and the benchmark for those goals is a standard, I believe. And I'll ask you to clarify that, but I don't know exactly what that benchmark is, but it's does it take into account population growth that we are currently experiencing at a state level? So in other words, as more people are coming to the state and more people are increasing the demand for our resources, is there a factor or an adjustment that will not penalize utility companies that are taking on additional customers that are increasing the demand on their systems? Just curious if you could clarify that for us, please.
Yeah, thanks for asking. I will be the first to say that I am not our utility expert at the Colorado Energy Office, so I will do the best that I can. My understanding is that and we do have a utility expert, although I don't know, Rob, if you're as expertise on that side of things. I don't know if you want to weigh in on this at all.
It's a little outside of my circle.
Yeah, it's a little outside my circle too. So I think generally speaking, our analyses have taken into account population growth. Obviously, as the utilities are putting together plans, so the regulated utilities that are regulated by the Public Utilities Commission have to put together, short, medium, and long-term plans essentially as to how they're going to achieve the goals that are required by the Public Utilities Commission, by the state as a whole, and how those are all going to account for the various factors. So reliability, meeting load, and having additional resources to back that load up, and all those different types of conditions. So all of these plans, which are far more complicated than anything I understand, do take into account all of those factors in front of the Public Utilities Commission. As far as some of the other utilities, I am not as sure about how their planning, I think, is monitored, or how those things are ensured. I think a lot of that is through like boards of directors and other types of entities that govern these utilities, like municipal and co-op utilities. But in terms of understanding the implications of a growing population, of a growing load, or a changing load picture, potentially more towards electric and less towards gas, all of those things are factored into forecasting and planning by the utilities.
Adam, if I can weigh in and also just add, I think to one of Rhett's questions, so the state requirement for the regulated utilities is a 80% emissions reduction as compared to a 2005 baseline, and that's total grid-wide emissions, so does not forgive for growth on the electric utility. And then, as Mayor Fickling put in the comments, then the utilities acquire resources that can demonstrate that emissions reduction. So that's going to mean more acquisition of non-carbon renewables or non-carbon resources to compensate for that growth to achieve the % reduction over the baseline year. So that's how they're treating it. So they definitely have to forecast what that growth looks like to know how much of those non-carbon resources need to be acquired, or low carbon resources need to be acquired to achieve the 80% reduction as compared to the 2005 total emissions baseline.
And also, to be clear, I mean, this is something utilities have always had to do, resource planning, right? Like this is not new. Obviously, there is another element to it in regard to carbon reduction and how those resources are going to play into the overall generation mix. But in general, the basic resource planning and ensuring that they're able to meet the service for all of the residents within their service territory. That has always been required. That is not new.
Correct. And our non-state regulated utilities, certainly I know that their targets, some of them have much more aggressive targets by, 100% non-carbon by 2030. Theirs are a little bit more sensitive in terms of their ability to achieve those based on their forecasted growth. So what they're acquiring, I think they're on a trajectory to get there, but just naming that they also have to do resource acquisition aligned with growth.
Thanks, Carolyn. Kim, I see your hand up. I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out I did pop Tri-State's goals into the chat, and Tri-State is the electricity provider to many, if not all, of the rural electric co-ops across the state. And Tri-State has pretty progressive goals. One of the things that we've discussed down here with regards to our climate action plan and local renewable energy, which is part of the goals that are in that climate action plan, is do we need to and do we want to consider to pursue community scale solar microgrids, given that Tri-State has the goals that they do? The short answer is that the leaders in the region say, yes, we still want local resiliency, local renewable energy on the grid. In case for some reason Tri-State doesn't meet those renewable energy goals, or SMPA decides to transition out and not use Tri-State anymore, et cetera, and just to have it locally, a responsibility of ours. I also just wanted to say that what I've heard here within SMPA territory, and again, we're rural, we're one of the most difficult locations, if not the most difficult rural co-op in the state or across Tri-State territory to provide electricity to, given our geography, that there is plenty of extra capacity on the grid for more electricity to flow through the existing lines and transmission. As Genevieve alluded to, there is a backlog on new transformers. So if significant more electricity at certain neighborhoods needed to increase and step up the electricity being provided, then that could be challenging, but it can be planned for. But as far as the broader electricity grid, my understanding is that at least here, there's plenty of extra capacity, so that isn't a concern. So I just kind of wanted to chime in with that.
Thank you, Kim. And Rhett, did all of those answers kind of address your question for the board?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, everyone. So we have about 5 minutes of public comment left. So I think that's about time for 2 to 3 more folks from the general public to share questions or additional comments for the board. So we'll kind of hold and see if there are any final hands. And if not, we'll talk about sort of wrap up additional opportunities for engagement and next steps for the board. Okay. I'm not seeing any new hands. So I think with that, we can maybe go ahead and close public comment for this meeting. Thank you to those folks who shared your comments vocally and those who participated in our interactive questions at the beginning. Your feedback is truly invaluable to this process. So really want to encourage everybody to continue to engage as we move through our process. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to wrap us up today and talk about some next steps and additional opportunities for folks to engage with the board throughout our process. So as far as ongoing engagement opportunities that we have 3 primary mechanisms that we'll be using to engage with the public throughout the rest of our process. So we have an online public comment form. This is on and accessible on the CEO's website on the Energy Code Board page. And Allie sent a link in the chat earlier, and maybe we can drop that link in again. This comment form is open at any time during the Energy Code Board process. And there are 2 opportunities within the comment form. The first is to submit any written comment. It could be whatever you would like to share with the board. And then the second is a code proposal comment. So if you have specific language that you'd like the code board to consider, or a specific code proposal you'd like them to consider, there's an opportunity for you to submit that exact specific code language in the comment form for the board's review. So those will be regularly reviewed by the board as we move through our process. And so highly encourage you all to use that tool as we go through. The next opportunity is public meetings. So we plan to have at least 2 more public meetings throughout our process. And just want to note that with some shifts in the Energy Code Board schedule that came with the passing of Senate Bill 214, we are finalizing the changes to the Energy Code Board schedule and hope to have those ready and posted for the public on at the start of July. So please keep an eye out for that. And if you are signed up for the Energy Code Board listserv or email list, you will receive a notice about the schedule and when those future public comment meetings will be. The final opportunity is an equity committee. And this is a group that we, Lotus and CEO, are reaching out to make sure that we are reaching our rural and disproportionately or underrepresented communities as part of the process. And so we'll be assembling an equity committee of around 10 to 15 folks to help jump in at key points of the Energy Code Board process and provide input from a diverse group of perspectives on the Energy Code and the direction the board is taking. So if you're interested in being involved and keeping up with the Energy Code Board, we highly, highly encourage you to sign up for our contact list. This is when we'll send out all of our meeting notices, our schedule updates, notice of public comment meetings, as well as when we release our draft code packages later in the year. They will also be shared through this platform. So the QR code is there if you guys want to scan it. It should take you directly to the link to sign up for the listserv. And then when we send out the slides and these get posted on the Energy Code Board website afterwards, we encourage folks, if you have other contacts in your network that you think should be a part of this process or is interested in this process, that we ask them to sign up for this listserv so that they can continue to stay involved. Our public meetings will be happening at key stages of the code development process. So our goal after this public comment meeting is to have our next few public comment meetings after we have draft code packages ready for the public to review and digest. So we will be making sure that you all, as the general public, have an opportunity to provide comment on those draft code packages as they're released. And we will make sure we're scheduling time with the board to decompress and debrief all of the different feedback that we're getting in these meetings. Just to note, all of our future public meetings, just like this one, will be virtual. And the intent behind that is to make sure that everyone from across the state, no matter where they are, can participate in these meetings and share their thoughts. So as I alluded to, we are currently reworking and shifting about our Energy Code Board schedule to the Energy Code Board. For my Energy Code Board members, we'll be hopefully getting you guys a draft of this to review soon. But it will be posted for the public to review in early July. And again, that will outline when our public comment meetings will be for the rest of the process. One thing we're hoping to include in our updated schedule is more time for the public review of those code packages. So once we release a draft code package, providing that sort of 30-day review window to the public to make sure that you all have time to review the draft code and succinctly think through your thoughts and comments to share back to the board. So more to come on this. And again, if you'd like to be updated on this schedule and when all of the timing of the public meetings and public review will be happening, please make sure you're signed up for our email list. And then again, just to quickly hit on the equity committee, the idea here is to intentionally bring fairness and equity concerns up to the board and make sure that we're really thinking about that regional and other diversity in our state and bringing a lot of different voices to the table to help inform this process. So as far as next steps, our next board meeting is June 11th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Board, you'll be receiving an agenda for that ahead of our meeting. And for any members of the public, again, if you would like to make sure you're in the loop on when these meetings are happening, please subscribe to the listserv. We'll continue to hammer that point. It's where all of our primary communications about this effort will be going out. So subscribe to that, and you will be aware of when all of our future meetings and schedule changes are. And with that, I will say thank you so much. First, to all of our attendees today, for those who shared your thoughts through our public comment, we so appreciate it. And then, of course, thank you to our board members for being here to listen to such wonderful comments today. So we'll let you guys go for the day. Again, remember, if you did not share comment today, but you'd like to share any additional thoughts, our comment forum is open and live on the CEO's website, and we welcome all comments then. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your Thursdays and have a good end of the week. So thanks everyone for being here today.
Thanks all.